Okay, the first bit's worked. It started to record, so that's a good point. And we have first people joining. It's always a bit I worry about with these webinars is that you click the button because there's lots of attendees waiting in the waiting room, and that maybe I've hit the wrong button, everybody disappears and never comes back again. It could happen. So, afternoon, everybody that is joining us. Hopefully you can hear us okay. If everybody can hear, we just do a little quick tech check just to make sure. If everybody could just put a quick note in the chat window, which should be enabled for everybody, just to say that you can hear me, that would be appreciated, and at least we know everything is working as it should. I see a few people in there already, which is good. Hopefully there'll be a few more. We've had quite a lot of people sign up for today, which is great, and hopefully we'll give people lots of takeaways to take away with them in terms of everything that we've got to talk about today. So I'm assuming people can hear. Somebody has raised their hand. So Lucy has raised her hand. Sorry, Lucy.
Sorry, that's me by accident.
That's fine. That's fine. So we know that the hand raising works. We shall tick this off the technical checklist. So we're all good. Perfect. So I think everybody should be able to hear us and stuff now. So it's just gone 12:03. So afternoon again, everybody. Thank you ever so much for joining us for this ATS panel discussion today. My name's Matt. I'm the CEO of AT Superstore. I've been in the world of assistive technology for, somebody pointed out, over 20 years yesterday, when I was considerably younger and definitely had hair at that point. And I'm joined today by three excellent individuals who are going to talk to us all about their experience and stuff today. So we've got Helen, Lisa, and Lucy as well. So Helen, if you'd like to introduce yourself to everybody first, that would be brilliant.
Okay, I am Helen. I do dyslexia and dyscalculia assessments. That's sort of one of my main things I do. I've been a Senko in a previous world as well. I'm dyslexic and I've got ADHD. It was about a year ago I found out I'd got ADHD after Lucy here made me go and get tested. I had the right act read to me. She was right. Always right. I also, when I'm not assessing and working with kids and families, I do quite a lot of research into sort of lived experience of dyslexia, neurodiversity, and some of that touches on educational technology as well. And I really like the contrast of academic kind of booky research versus commercial research because they're very, very different flavors of ways of sort of engaging with stuff. So yeah, I get to do lots of cool stuff and I'm very, very lucky actually, very lucky. And I've got one small human and a large human who puts up with me for quite a lot of the time. So yeah.
Brilliant. And I believe you're in charge of the small human all on your own yesterday, I think, weren't you?
I managed adulting all by myself yesterday.
So win-win. Win-win. The week's complete now. Brilliant. Thank you ever so much, Helen. Lisa.
Yeah, hi, I'm Lisa. I am the Send and Inclusion lead for the St. Bart's Trust and have been working with them for just 2 years now. But prior to that, I've had 18 years of experience as a teacher and senior leadership and Senko. And I'm also the mum to two not so tiny humans, one of whom is autistic. So I think I have that lived experience as a parent as well as a professional to bring.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Lisa. And last but not least, Lucy.
Hi, I'm Lucy Petling. I work at Moon Hall, which is a specialist dyslexia school in Surrey. All the children there have a diagnosis of dyslexia. I was a Senko, head of SEN at Moon Hall. Took over the assessment centre, which Helen works in as well, and that was a great success. And we still provide assessments for anybody. They don't have to be Moon Hall kids in all different kinds of assessments: ADHD, autism, dyslexia, speech and language, OT, everything, behaviour optometry. And I've just gone out to Cairo in Egypt to open up Moon Hall Cairo.
Amazing. So I was going to say, Lucy is joining us from Cairo. She's obviously keeping the blinds so that we don't get too distracted by all that probably lovely sun and weather and everything else going on out there. So thank you all very much. Like I say, I really do appreciate your time and stuff today, and your input in the conversation. Just for everybody that's joined and stuff, like I say, if you do want to ask a question in the Q&A, you can put your questions and stuff in there. You should be able to use the chat function as well. So please, by all means, put any questions and stuff as we go along. I will try and relay those to the panel as we go. So I guess what are we sort of here to talk about today, really, and stuff in terms of everything. And I think what we wanted to try and do is to bring together some experiences and discussion points really around, what is an inclusive school look like in 2025? What are the key changes? What environments does that, we're looking to maintain? What about the role of the Senkos? What about the role of technology that plays in all of this and stuff as well? So from my point of view and experience, I've only ever worked within the technology side for students at universities who have receipt of DSA, and I see we've got a couple of people on the call who'd be familiar with that. But something that we're trying to sort of look at within AT Superstore is to sort of reach a wider audience, really, in terms of those children going through education, where there is lots of amazing technology that they maybe don't get access to until they go to university. How do we utilize that technology? Is it just the technology? What about the role and the stuff that the Senko is playing within that as well? And then also, how do you access things? And I think there's a few key points around this that became apparent in another webinar I had the pleasure of doing with David from Moon Hall a couple of weeks ago, was that some of the terminology that we use can sometimes be a little bit off-putting. Sometimes we use the word technology, and there's potentially, is that going to be difficult to use? Is it going to be costly? How do we get children to engage with it, schools to engage with it, parents, etc.? And it becomes part of the environment. So that's really what we want to try and do today, and very much in an open discussion format. So like I say, I'm very lucky to have obviously Lisa, Helen and Lucy with me, who've got all this great experience that hopefully we can impart on people and stuff today. So I'm going to sort of kick off with Lisa. I'm going to pick on you for the first question on this one. So what are the key changes setting inclusive schools apart? So how are our schools shifting in terms of what they're doing, whether that be technology, the design, environment, or things like that? So you could start off with that one. That would be amazing.
Yeah, I think the work that we've been doing has been around that whole school approach to SEND and inclusion. So not having a Senko that gets half an afternoon a week to do a job that's, should be full time. We've been developing inclusion teams in our schools, which overlap with the pastoral support, the safeguarding team. So it's a real team around the child approach. And that recognition that what works for children with SEND actually is really good practice for every child. So not having an offer that's just directed at particular children with particular needs. A lot of what we do is accessible for everybody. So we're really lucky at St. Bart's that we're a one-to-one device trust. All the children in our schools have an iPad from year one upwards. And this means that we had 7 Ofsteds in 7 weeks recently. It was really a really interesting experience to sort of be part of. And one of the inspectors that have been into 3 of our schools said that every time he comes to St. Bart's School, he just sees layers of inclusion that are there for everybody. You can't pick out the children with SEND. We haven't got children sat there with talking tins or with, they don't look different because everybody has an iPad. And what's available on there is available for everybody that needs it. So we use voice notes, speech to text, immersive reader. Every child has the keynote from the board on their iPad. So if they forgot what was just said, they can flip back and see. Or if they need to look ahead a little bit, they can do. We use in the moment assessment, which goes straight to the teacher's iPad, and the teachers teach using their iPad, not a laptop. So they're walking around the class all the time, standing next to the children that need that connection and sense of belonging. Children know that they are independent learners. They don't need an adult to sit next to them to help them because they show me they're the experts in technology in our trust. I've got children that will say, don't you know how to use a split screen? Don't you know how to do this? And they will literally in a moment show me what to do. And I'll be writing down notes as they tell me how to do it, so I know for next time. So there's a real ownership, and that sense of belonging, which I talk about a lot, is so important for our children to feel psychologically safe, and to feel connected, but also that they are the experts in their own learning and that they can show that. So an example we talked about recently was not spending time cutting out and sticking, because the learning objective was around evidencing your knowledge of the water cycle, and the children got to choose in the class how they did that. Some used animations, some used videos. The ideas they came up with were amazing, and at the end it was really clear that they knew everything they needed to know about a water cycle, and they've been able to demonstrate that without having to sit there with a pencil and a piece of paper or scissors and glue, being busy doing something else which wasn't about the context of the learning. So I think the key things are that whole school approach to SEND and inclusion, where everybody has ownership. Everybody in school is a leader of SEND, whether that is the teacher, the TA, our staff in the office access, all of the training that we do. Our caretakers are really fab at connecting with the children. So it's building those relationships and having that golden thread through everything that we do. Every decision we make, we think about how will this impact our most vulnerable learners. And everybody buys in. It's not the SENCO's job, it's everybody's job to make sure our children belong and that they succeed. And we focus on reducing those barriers to learning rather than, we've got 3 children with dyslexia, 1 child with ADHD, 1 child with autism, 1 child with dyscalculia. Where do we start with meeting their needs? Well, actually, let's just make sure our classrooms are really inclusive and the environment is inclusive. And then when we're teaching with all of the different technology, all the accessibility features that we've got through our devices, every child can succeed and recognise their progress and contribution.
Yeah. It's an interesting point about the whole school approach. I've been scribbling some notes as you go along there, Lisa, in terms of what you're saying. And so I guess for people watching stuff, how do you go about doing that in terms of that sort of whole school? I guess to a certain extent, and you have to excuse me on this one, but from a pupil sort of perspective, it's part of what they do, if that makes sense. And you reference how tech savvy. There's things on my phone that my niece took great pleasure in showing me that I didn't even know it could do. How does that sort of extend then to sort of the like you say, the teachers, the caretakers and things like that in terms of getting them sort of to get on board, if you like?
Yeah, I think so. Every school in the trust is on a journey at a different point because they've joined the trust at different points. And technology, like you said, Matt, can be really scary for some people. I'm not great at tech myself. I tend to just break things by being quite close to them and they just stop working. And when I was teaching, we used to have an IT specialist, and the second something wouldn't work, all 30 children would say, shall we go and get Mrs. Neat? And I say, no, I'll be able to do it. And then a few minutes later, I'd say, do you want to go and get Mrs. Neat? And she'd literally get to the door, not even come into the classroom and say, is everything okay? And it would work. So I feel really cursed with technology. It's not my friend really. So that's been a huge journey for everybody to be on, because we're our children are so tech savvy, more so than us. And so it's being courageous. We expect our children to come to school every day and to be brave and courageous and to feel that sense of failure before you get that learning. And we need to embrace that ourselves more, don't we? Which is tricky, but we have to model that ourselves. So I think that sort of approach to there's no blame. Our culture is based on every adult and every child has the opportunity to make mistakes, and it's okay, and to learn from that, to ask for support in a non-judgmental way. So all of our children have that, and all of our adults, we aim to have that too. So if you don't know how to do something, we ask, and we've got digital leads across the trust that work in each of our schools, supporting and sharing that great practice. And in this day and age of technology, you would think that you'd have this linked up network where everybody could really readily share. And even within our trust, that's been a piece of work over the last 2 years, where we've got amazing things happening in specific schools, but it doesn't naturally get shared. So we've had to plan for that to develop it. And for example, one of our schools, and we use Shobi in all of our schools, and they created a button that they called Speak Out, and it's on every iPad in the school, and any child can press it and send a message, voice note or text, with a problem, any problem whatsoever, and it goes to the pastoral team, and they go and find that child and they deal with it straight away. It doesn't cost anything because the schools have already got Shobi, and the impact of this has been absolutely amazing from a safeguarding point of view, but also from a friendship and social inclusion point of view. It's been so powerful, and it just was mentioned in passing at one of our network meetings, and now we're in the process of rolling it out into every school, because to be able to just press a button and know that there's somebody on the end that cares, that if you're not able to speak up in class, or if you're really not sure, then you can do that. And I think it's those examples that we need to share across the country, not just across trust, to make sure that we make that difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Helen, Lucy, anything at all from yourselves
Yeah,
on that
I think
side?
I was scribbling as well. I've done a bit of work within the Welsh curriculum. So in 2022, I think it was, like a new curriculum started rolling up in schools in Wales. And one of the things that was sort of embodied into that, and I actually met the bloke who wrote this into the curriculum at a conference, goodness, years ago. We met and had a chat. And it's the concept of sort of there's a couple of things around digital literacy. And I think it's interesting that you said that kids are tech savvy. Yes, but no. They can do some stuff, but and your kids in your school, obviously they've had that training. But God, I remember my last school that I worked at was Stonehenge School. Save your work. How do I do that? How to save your PowerPoint, please save your PowerPoint. The kids couldn't do that. So there are some really fundamental skills lacking. And this concept of digital literacy that Tom sort of really champions within initially in the Welsh curriculum is so important. And that what I see, and I've had a chat this morning with somebody about this, kids have got all the tech, great. Some kids have all the tech, not a clue what to do with it because there's not the culture, like what Lisa was saying, of that inclusion and that kind of adaptive teaching. And where stuff is actually resourced and you have that culture. And I think we've got a real job on in schools that haven't got that culture of kind of going, hello, you've got the Windows accessibility features, you've got it, you've got Office 365. From me, I asked at one of my schools where I worked, could you please just turn on the thing so my emails can read themselves to me as a staff member? It never happened, and wasn't ideal. So there is so much that is just excellent in software packages in the sort of in the ether that can be used if schools just turn the button on. If they just literally the database person, the network manager is in a position to go on. And that is so frustrating. And I really, we've kind of got the nation where we're battling with, oh, if they've got a computer, it's cheating. No, it's not. It's not. So there's what I love, it was a joy to hear you, Lisa, talking about the culture that you have worked together, because it's not a one-man band job. Everybody is clearly pulling together and being brave and being courageous, as you said, to create a culture where, like Julia Clouter from Scanning Pens, she's got this wonderful kind of box of tricks that she would have, that there's a toolkit, an adaptive toolkit where it's got stuff in it. It's brilliant. It's a joy to listen to. Really, really impressive. I love it.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Helen, Lucy, it's all from your side, but then obviously Moon Hall and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think Helen's right. I think Lisa's right in respect that, if only a minority of children are using the technology, then they look out of place, they look like they're different and they don't want to use it. I think it's also important what Helen said, that is really vital, that children are able to use the assistive technology and are aware of how to use it. It's no good saying to a kid when they're doing their GCSEs, oh, here's your English language paper, and by the way, we put it on text help because we can't use a human reader, off you go. At Moon Hall, we have an assisted technology lesson every week. So from the age of year 3, so that's 8 years old, all the way up to 16, they will have a lesson every.
Got some internet issues, I think, there, Lucy.
Technology, which will mean that they'll learn to the reading pen, everything. Oh, sorry, did you hear any of it?
We
Yeah.
lost you a little bit there, Lucy. Yeah, your internet was a little bit crackly in that bit.
Sorry. I was just saying it's at Moon Hall, they all have an assisted technology lesson from the age of year 3 up until they leave, which in year 11, and they learn how to use text help. They learn how to use the reading pens. They learn how to touch type. So it's everything. So they can use it as part of their daily life. And you know, it's so important because obviously when they go into that English language GCSE exam, you cannot use a human reader. You have to use either a reading pen or something like text help. So you know, it's and I can see some children, you know, if they haven't been that invested in learning using the text help, and we use that on our GCSEs, you can see the look of panic on their face, and they're like, "You cannot read it to me." It's like, no. So I think there's a part of it is, yes, it's a whole school culture, but also we need to make sure that children learn how to use it and use it really well.
100%.
When do we write? Like, okay, I do actually have a to-do. I was writing notes there, but actually quite often I'll be in a webinar and I'll be typing my notes. When do I write that anybody else has to read? No one needs to read my writing. It's terrible. And embedding it's life skills, isn't it? Like you're setting kids up so that if they're a plumber, they're going to use a computer. If they're a Sparky, if they're a lawyer, whatever people do, they're going to use tech. So why are we not? Why are we stuck in the Stone Age? Is it just, it doesn't make sense to me at all.
I think it's quite an interesting piece, and it segues nicely into sort of the next part of this, and the next questions around assistive technology. And you're right, Helen, in the fact that, you know, let's be honest, we use technology every day of our lives in some format, whether that's doing the banking on the phone. You know, I very often use a sat nav on my phone when I'm somewhere and I can't work out where to go. You know, that becomes part of our normal everyday life. So, but there are, you know, within the assistive technology products, specific features that are designed for people with specific disabilities. But what we also tend to find is that, you know, sort of maybe with undiagnosed disabilities, or especially when we see it in the workplace, and especially could be even with teachers and stuff, where they haven't declared a disability because they don't know about it, but they start to use the technology, they start to use a feature, and it's got the benefit. And actually, I don't think I've got dyslexia, but I find this particular feature really helps me do something. And it becomes very inclusive. And I think you see that a lot with some of the softwares. And Lucy, you mentioned the pens, and I think when we spoke the other day, I know of a school that has a couple of pens in their reception that they actually use for parents as where English is a second language. So they can actually use the pen to then actually scan the document, it will then convert it into the language to have it read back. So, you know, this has very inclusive abilities with this technology to use it. And it's very much, I think, if we can embrace that and get schools to use it across every classroom, every teacher, every, you know, even I know some of the software products allow parents to even use them at home as part and parcel of sort of getting that engagement process in and stuff. So, Lisa, if I can start with you, obviously with Moon Hall, you know, that's something that is, as you mentioned, you know, you have that lesson and stuff. You know, is there anything from sort of that you can share that maybe wider schools can sort of even find the opportunity to do that, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, I've always believed, even when I wasn't working at Moon Hall, that touch typing is a life skill. I think it's like swimming. It's really important. And, you know, like Helen said, today I've done a little bit of handwriting, but everything I do, my emails, writing up documents, I do it all, you know, all on the laptop or on the computer. And I think if there's one win that schools could do is to get all those children on a touch typing program, whether that's CAS, which I know you sell through AT Superstore, which we use at Moon Hall. I just think it's just such an important life skill. You know, you can just tell somebody who can touch type and somebody who, you know, is just doing finger. And it's particularly good for dyslexic kids because it's that motor memory. You know, something that I just think, you know, it should be part of the school curriculum.
Yeah, absolutely. Helen, I'm going to come to you next because there's a wry smile where you mentioned the one finger typing, which is, I have to say, is a particular favorite of mine. I mean, now and again I'll mix it up a bit, but
It's funny because my brother, so I did my GCSEs in 1998. My brother's 2 years older than me. He did his GCSEs in 1996. David learned to touch type at school. I didn't. They, for whatever reason, they took it off our curriculum. So I, I have never learned to touch type. I've got grade 8 piano, so I can do the thing, but my typing is not accurate. And I type really quickly. I've written a PhD. Lordy, you learn to type because you've had enough of it. But the one thing, the difference between me and my brother, and my parents used to sort of see us, and even if we're both at my parents' house or in the same place, and we both have work to do, we're on our laptops. My mum will sometimes sit and just laugh and watch my face every time I go wrong because I go. Apparently, I just pull the stupidest faces. But it is just a life skill that I don't type one-handed, but I don't have accurate typing. And I can't unlearn now. I'm 43. Like, I'm not going to unlearn that easily. I've got time. I'm just a dinosaur in that respect. But it is so important. And also from the kind of RSI point of view, because if you don't type properly, having had to have steroid injections the week before my grade 8 piano, your wrists are important. It's about looking after yourself as a person, getting the ergonomics right, getting your way of working set up right. It's really, really important. It's not trivial. It sounds trivial, but it's not, because steroid injections are not fun. RSI is not fun. I have RSI subsequently, so yeah, something to have in mind.
I think that's
Can I just interrupt as well, Matt, just
yeah, go for
quickly?
it.
I mean, from an access arrangements point of view, because I'm an access arrangements assessor and I know Helen is as well, but children can use a laptop without any application to the board. So as long as it's a school laptop, you can put your kids on laptops and they can type their work. And it's not something that you have to, make an access arrangements or an application or prove that they've got bad handwriting. Any child can use a laptop, whether they've got dyslexia, ADHD, or no need whatsoever. And it's just a really important thing, because some kids, their handwriting is so poor, or if they can type really well, then that confidence, they can probably get a few percent better in a GCSE than if they were writing by hand.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think this is great. This is exactly what we wanted to try and sort of get out today with those bits and nuggets of information and stuff like that, Lucy. So thank you for sharing.
And the same with the reader as well. And depending on what package you've got and the detail of the package, if you've got a laptop that does reading and typey, that actually hits. And iPads, I would imagine. I've never actually used an iPad. We are definitely an Android house, I'm afraid. And my dad worked at IBM, never used an iPad. But iPads do talking. They do it all. So you've got one bit of kit that does the lot. That actually iPads, PCs, whatever tablet thing you've got, they're life skills that carry on. So it's quite an efficient way of working as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was
Lisa.
thinking that, sorry, when Lucy was saying about the touch typing skills, a number of years ago, we had a little group of children that had dyslexia assessments, and we got the dyslexia reports through with the recommendations, and clearly one of those recommendations was touch typing. So we had 5 or 6 children every day that would do 10 minutes in the afternoon of touch typing. And I remember the other children in class saying, can we do that? It looks really fun, the program that we were using. And we were saying, no, those children just need that. And then you fast forward to, these years later where you think, actually, what works for children with SEND works for everyone in the class. So let's make it just what we do, not just for particular children. We can all do that, and it will benefit all of us through life. And I think that's the change in culture, isn't it, from working within schools, that it's not specific things for specific children in that difference anymore. At a bigger level, it's let's all learn to touch type. Let's all be able to adapt the background on our iPad. Let's all have access to the keynote, because we don't want cognitive overload and working memory. And as adults, we use a to-do list. Helen, I know you said you just write out. I use them all the time, and I use a diary. All of those scaffolds, those external scaffolds that we use to support our way of working, are just our way of working. And so why not develop that for our children, to give them those tools right from the beginning?
100%.
That's life, isn't it? I mean, life should be about giving people, whatever stage you're at. Was it 2006, 2007? It was like, stage, not age. Well, nothing substantive happened with that, did it really? And that was what got my goat and why I did a PhD in. But actually, at any stage of education, one needs to be doing the kind of planning, prep, organisation skills. You know, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that a 10-year-old uses or an 8-year-old uses a Pomodoro technique or Calendly, but actually sometimes if you've got a kid who is savvy in that way, who works that way, why would they not use the Pomodoro technique? Why could they not start to use their Google Home or Alexa or whatever to do stuff, to prompt them things, to ask for spellings? Like, God, the number of kids I've tutored over the years that ask Alexa how to spell long words, why not?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, just moving on from the technology into and this sort of does link in a little bit, I think, as well, is that, we've spoken about all the great things that are going on out there, and we've spoken about the products. I guess, how do we make that meet in the middle, if that makes sense? Because, I'm very much aware that there's lots of stuff going on with schools. There are lots of smaller schools. My mum is an ex-primary school head, and I think it's a very tiny school in the middle of Wales where I think it was her and a couple of other teachers at best. And we appreciate that each school is different, each environment and stuff is different and what's available. How do technology companies, software companies, training providers, schools, how do we sort of join that up, if that makes sense, in terms of what can each do to move that forward so that we are talking about an inclusive environment, whether that be, through the curriculum, whether that be through staff training and things like that. Because I'm a firm believer that, we're all in this together, no matter which side of the fence we're on or whatever, that we're all in this together. But how do we collectively move that in a direction of stuff, which ultimately is going to for those pupils and for those students to get that support that they need and stuff in place, and for teachers, teaching assistants, Senkos, etc., to also feel ultimately confident in everything that is out there and that they can deliver. I'm going to ask you that one first, Lisa, if I can. Sorry to put you on the spot with that one, but I think it's interesting in what we've spoken about and then in that environment. But, how do companies and organizations and things out there, with as AT Superstore, we've got hundreds of products on there. How do those products, how did they provide or work with schools and stuff, or do that to help it, to work together? And I think that's the bit that I'm always keen to sort of get across. And one thing that we want to do with AT Superstore is to create some communities and some forums on there, so everybody can share some best practice with their peers and things, and people can ask those questions and stuff that, we can share that information. I don't think there's any harm in sharing that information, to be honest, and then hopefully people can use that to the benefit.
Yeah, and I was making notes while you were talking. I think the answer is that collaboration, creating communities. I worked in business for 15 years before joining education, and we know that in education there is no money, there is no time, and we know that our children only get one shot at education. And I think for me, the biggest thing is everybody that I work with within education, that there is no ego. There is no, it's not a competition. We just want the very best outcomes for all of our children, not all of our children in our trust, all of our children across the country. And I've been really privileged to work with so many national SEND leaders who are very much sharing anything and everything that they can to support schools to do better. And I have never worked with a school that hasn't wanted to do better, because we know it would be much easier to go and work at Asda or in a library than the heart-wrenching work that you often do working with our children, where we carry in our hearts, the impact of what we don't manage to get right for them. So our trust very much share that great practice. We've done some open events where we've invited any school in the local area and beyond to come and see what we're doing. And we're not saying we're experts, and we don't say we get it right, but we just say come and see. We shared our journey. we've got George Barlow, who works for our trustees, our digital lead, and he shared a presentation recently where he talked about the money that we've saved in our schools on not buying glue sticks and not buying paper and not buying as many textbooks and exercise books, because of our digital journey has really offset the cost, to the point where it's negligible for the investment in the iPads, across our schools. And then we've looked at workload, and it was something ridiculous like, oh, I don't know, with 1,200 hours that were saved of staff workload by using digital. And the in the moment feedback that children get, we've used conditional formatting where when they're doing their maths work, the answer turns green if they've got it right, and it stays orange if they haven't. So straight away, those children know, is it right or wrong? And if it is right, great, they move on. And if it's not, they'll have another look, they'll ask the person next to them, then they'll speak to the teacher. So all of those sort of skills that don't really cost anything extra are just being shared, and being shared by, not just our trust. Like I say, I work with lots of other trusts, lots of other professionals who are just saying, come and see what we do. What can we help you with? So it is that, sharing the strong practice and developing communities that can collaborate. And then working with tech providers. We've worked with a number of companies that are just developing something and have said, can we practice with you? Would you like to trial it for us? And we've used some moderating software where you take a photo of a piece of writing and it tells you what level it's at, what the next steps are, how it can be improved. Well, the children are now taking photos of their own writing and getting that feedback, and then they're working on the next steps independently before an adult's involved. And that's, I think, having the chance to try things before you buy them, clearly, but also being part of the development of those. Another piece of software, I'm trying not to name them in case we're not allowed, but it's
No,
around
no.
so we've been doing some work with Magma Maths, and that's a program where the children are doing their maths on the iPad through Magma, but it uses AI to generate the next steps, for challenge. But if they're getting it wrong, it uses AI to take them back a step, and it identifies those misconceptions, and then creates an activity in the moment, to help to address that. And if you think you've got 30 children all working at different levels, with the adult in the class being able to support that sense of belonging and connection and courageousness and getting things wrong, supporting self-esteem, the children are just flying. And our children with dyslexia, who find it very difficult to spell and can have shame around their writing not looking so great, or you can have some of the best storytellers in the world that will write 3 sentences because of the effort it takes, but they could probably tell you the best story in the whole school. And using speech to text and creating, one of our classes recently, we're using speech to text to create a description of a setting that AI then created a photograph of what they'd created, and it was a gloomy woods. And then a couple of the boys were saying, oh, I wanted my trees to look a bit more, sort of overwhelming, and I wanted it to be so then they had to go back and change what they'd written, and then AI automatically changed their image. And I wanted to sit with them and do that. It was so empowering when you think of only a few years ago, where you put a photo on the board and they had to sit and write 10 sentences to describe it. It's really turned it on its head and supported that purpose of writing, that motivation. And the focus isn't on your ability to write a sentence with the right spelling and the right grammar, because being an author isn't about having the right grammar. You tend to have an editor or whatever authors have. It's your ideas in your head. It's the ideas in your head that are the most important thing. And our children need to grow up knowing that the ideas in their head are the most important part, and actually will find a way to get them recorded. And for me, that's the biggest change that I see in children.
Can I jump in there? I've spent this last week on the M1. Like, I live near Bath, and I've been in Leeds, and I was in Portsmouth the other week as well. Like, authors do have editors. We love our editors. They're beautiful, beautiful people, very patient. But this, what you were talking about, the photo thing. I was at a conference in Leeds for Delta Academies Trust, because years and years ago, I used to work with one of their SEN leads, like my first job in the Down Valley. And so I've kind of been doing bits and bobs with Delta for the last 2, 3 years, I think it is. And they've been doing bits and bobs with scanning pens around the toolkits, because I hooked them up with James. They have been using that. They talked about using that photo thing. Their SEN lead was, oh, bless her, Becca Caddy. She's beautiful. Organised the most wonderful conference. I will pick her up. She she was just chuffed to bits with that kind of a similar idea. But what the conference was, it was a kind of Delta conference, but they had reached out to other schools. They said anybody can come, sort of in the Leeds, Yorkshire, up to about Bridlington. I don't know how far down, Nottinghamshire, but kind of that bit of the world. And it was lovely because people from all over the shop came. I spoke at a thing last night in a school in Wiltshire, Springfield Academy. It's mostly kids with autism, but all the coinciding bits and bobs. And they use tech. They are so inclusive, and they've got toolkits. And it's just kids are facilitated to flourish because they don't need to worry about, well, I can't hold my pen properly.
Mm.
I can't type perfectly, so and I don't want to talk in front of the class. And just it's so beautiful because what was lovely last night and the other week was different schools sharing, talking about what they do. And I always make people talk to each other when I do it. No one wants to listen to me for an hour. I'm boring. But like when people from different settings come together, you do share good practice, and it's so important because you've got if you're looking at an elephant, looking at its bum versus looking at an elephant's face, you see a very different thing. Still an elephant, but a different perspective on that elephant is so important. And we've got that with kids in teaching. So I love it. It's brilliant. I feel like I want to have a nosy at your schools, Lisa, at some point when I'm up in the Midlands.
Welcome to come anytime.
Perfect. Lucy, as well from you, just to wrap up that side.
Yeah, I mean, like Lisa said, at Moon Hall, we also run Senko forums, and we have different, we've had AT Superstore come and talk to parents. We've had AT Superstore come and talk to other Senkos at schools. It's a bit like a Tupperware party, isn't it? And I think what's great about AT Superstore is, and it's just not one product.
Yeah.
It's lots of products. It's a bit like going on to John Lewis and saying, right, I want a black jacket, and about 10 pop up and you can have a little look at them. I haven't looked at your website for a while, Matt. I apologise, but I have bought some products from you recently. But I mean, can you put reviews? Like you have put reviews when you shop online in Marks and Spencers and John Lewis.
It is something that we're looking at, although I'm just scribbling down the new strap line for it's like Tupperware, I think is what we're going to put as
Tupperware party.
yeah.
Yeah, when you all used to go around and look at the products and handle them, and I think it's something. Maybe you could start to do those kind of parties. Senkos have them around their house, and get your reading pens out and things like that.
Oh, it's a
Who
model of our
knows?
life.
Who knows where that could take us, Lucy? But you make a very interesting point, and I think the review side is something that we've looked at. I think the interesting part that we've tried to do as well with AT Superstore is, and this again came from lots of feedback from schools, and I learned quite a lot of this talking to people at the TES show last October. Was that talking to teachers, I said, oh, well, I go on Google and I search. Okay, so you're asking a very specific thing into a search engine, which is going to ultimately give you results based on that search, but also then encompassing people's paid ad campaigns, their SEO work, etc. Therefore, is that it's a great starter, but what we wanted to try and do with AT Superstores has a smart search is that you can actually go on and specifically then find products that are based exactly on your search criteria, whether it's by age group, by disability, etc. So you do get a finite set of results and stuff. And then I think you can see the reviews. And as I said earlier, what we really want to do is then create community so that people can share good practice and people can go on there, and then we can sort of, spread the word and stuff where there are success stories out there, and maybe teachers in Senko schools don't know where to go or don't know where to be signposted to find that information. But if they can see, the work that you're doing at Moon Hall, the work that Lisa's doing, etc., that they can go, do you know what? Actually, hang on. This is working. This is what we need to do, and somebody's already done it. And I do find that
There's a gap in
sometimes
there.
that's what we need is that sense of
What I
somebody.
do.
Yeah,
I
go
think
for it.
it's where it's really important to have big data is really important. So where you've got schools doing things like Moon Hall and Lisa's schools do as well, where you're trying things out. Talamo's done loads of work in this field. I've done bits and bobs with various companies as well, where we evaluate tech. you need the big data to say, for some tech, not all tech can be evaluated with the input, kids are here, do a bit of techie stuff, slightly broad strokes. This is where they leave having used the tech. So you want to look at progress. And that big data is really important, the kind of statistical improvement, statistical change where you can. And I think that does need to come where possible from an external voice. So I'm sort of I'm on panels. There's a woman out of Stavanger University in Norway called Natalia Kusikova, I think it is. I'm on sort of a panel with her, and I've done bits and bobs with that panel. I've done bits and bobs working with industry where we evaluate tech. But with that evaluation, it's really important to have the personal stories, because I've been a Senko, you've got purchasing. I have purchasing power with my own kids that I work with. I want to know what is the improvement, but I also want to know what kids think of it, because you can have the best bit of kit, and this is how we define best. You can have a really fancy piece of tech, but if kids go, well, that's not very good, there's no point. Kids they're not going to bite. So you need case studies, discursive kind of experiential stuff. And I think that probably does need to come from some point in research evaluation of tech. And then if you throw that as a kind of little grenade into an online community, an in-person community, like a real-time interaction type community where people can really chew it and discuss it, that's really important. But I think having a community, the community needs to have a bit of robust, good quality research to talk about, as well as the lived experience of it. And I think that the research gap around ed tech is it's huge. There's the discourse around it, and with my Birmingham Uni lecturer hat on, there's a big gap as well. So I think it's something to be worked on, but it's part of what I do. And it's cool, it's fun. I love looking at tech. I'm such a geek. I did engineering first time round. I loved it. So
Perfect. No, brilliant. Thank you all. Look, I'm very conscious of time and just looking at where we are. So there's been a couple of questions and stuff in the window and stuff in terms of sort of comments and stuff from people. Adrian has commented. Now I know Adrian from for many years and stuff here, and he's put that, you know, working in disability team at university, which is correct me if I'm wrong, unless you've moved. Adrian's Anglia University over in Cambridge. He's saying it's great to see how schools are bringing in AT already and stuff, because obviously it is harder for students with disabilities to fully engage. By the time they get to higher education, they're gaining receipt of DSA, and to have that technology embedded at a sort of an earlier stage and stuff. So, and I know, like I say, Adrian's been in that university sort of disability sector for many years. Helen's also put here, it's refreshing to hear that all speakers advocate for schools being inclusive by design. Her daughter's school, they were not even allowed to try using a scanning pen because they did not want to fund technology they couldn't necessarily buy for pens for all children who would benefit. Again, I think this is where, and I think, Lisa, what you said is a very interesting part around your trust in terms of, you know, that budget side. Okay, if we're not doing this, that actually frees up money to pay for that technology and things. I don't know if PTAs at school are a thing anymore. You know, it was 35 odd many years ago when I was at school. You know, there was nothing wrong with a good duck race to raise and a barbecue to raise a few pounds to pay for these things. But again, I think it's an interesting point that you make in terms of how and where, you know, and the technology. Is it expensive in the great scheme of things? Pens, funnily enough, was a conversation I had with a school not too far from you in Shrewsbury last week, was about actually the use of the technology over and above the cost of an actual reader in an exam. And actually, the pens were more cost effective for the school, not only at that point, but also long term as well. So I think it's that argument as well, as how do we sort of exercise that?
Matt, you said last night as well that you know, when our children leave school and become adults in society, they won't employ a person to walk around with them to do their reading or their scribing. But if they're using technology, we very much carry our phones around with us that can do that for us. So it's that way of working, isn't it?
Absolutely. So I'm just going to wrap this up now, ladies. That's okay with you, and thank you everybody for joining. From each of you, just quickly, one small takeaway that people can take away from this and from your experiences and stuff as well, which I think is something we want to leave people with is, you know, we've had some great conversations, some great information shared, but Lucy, do you want to go first on this one? I can see Helen's thinking about this one, so let's.
Not very successfully.
Yeah, I think probably one of the biggest takeaways is to think, you know, how can I schools obviously technology is expensive, but schools also want to show value added and they also want their kids to do well in their GCSEs. So I think, you know, as a Senko, how would I sell it to my senior leadership team? I need this because they will be able to use this in the exam. So, you know, I need text help or I need a reading pen because this will help a child in an exam. And, you know, we can use this exam access arrangement really easily. And I think that's probably a way to sell it to your SLT is what's in it for them, how can we improve results at school? And I think that then you can probably get around the investment a little bit more.
Brilliant, thank you. Lisa, do you want to go next?
I think for me, it's about engaging with events like this where, you know, you can learn more about what's out there, you can connect with other people. I've already made a note of Lucy's names that I can connect after and find out all about your school. I can't imagine a school where everybody has a diagnosis of dyslexia and how affirming that must be and how your practice must be amazing. I want to magpie all of your ideas to bring back to our trust. So I think it's just about being open. You know, we only know what we know, and every conversation, every interaction, we have the opportunity to learn something and to add something to our toolbox. And there's so much support out there that everybody just gives for free in education. You know, we're all sharing our experience. So just ask and connect would be my advice.
Brilliant, thank you, Lisa. And finally from you, Helen.
It's about the holistic view. I've got something that's going live next week that I'm not allowed to formally, but I've got something really exciting next week where I'm going to be looking at well-being and anyone who works with people, anyone, where you engage with other people, where somebody's got a different way of processing the world, well-being, if you can't process it and if you are blocked in any way, shape, or form, your well-being just goes a bit wonky donkey. I spent school feeling not clever. I spent school feeling thick as two short ones until I realised I was dyslexic, and even that doesn't leave you. I was 17, it doesn't leave you. So I think even if kids don't get a diagnosis, because when structures make it quite difficult, if we address the things, the barriers that are in place, if we take them out and just kind of go, do what you need to do, kids, like with photo descriptions or whatever, they're not going to see all the stuff they can't do because there's a different way around, and they will see there's a different way around. If kids see, I do that way, somebody else does it differently, you kind of normalize the notion of people doing things differently, which means no one feels different in a negative way. And I think if we get that right, we can stem kind of head off the awful, awful mental health difficulties that kids end up with, people end up with, before they get to be a thing, because they haven't felt rubbish against their peers, because they're not, because there's a different way to do stuff. And I think tech is a really strong way to do that. Also, there's somebody on the list who's attending, and I have a feeling I know her. It's Jo, or she's gone, but there was somebody who was attending who I thought I knew. So yeah, I think that's what I would take. If we get things right early on, we save an awful lot of emotional turmoil later on. And I think that's valuable, really valuable for everybody.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Excellent. Well, thank you all very much. Helen, Lisa, Lucy, thank you for your time. Really appreciated it. I've learnt an incredible amount today, so thank you for your input. Hopefully everybody that's joined us has as well. We are going to record this session, is being recorded, sorry, so we will make it available to people. Any questions or anything else anybody's got, please get in contact with us and we will hopefully be able to then direct you in the right place to gain more information. Anybody's interested in there, we've got some interesting new things on the horizon. Interesting products coming out of other countries, Canada, one in particular, I think Lucy knows the one that I'm talking about because I think they're talking to you guys next week. There's the whole picture of different products and stuff that are out there that are coming this way, which again, I think are all designed to sort of embed at that early stage and stuff so that we can sort of get that and become inclusive, you know, so let's get everybody using it. It's something that goes on in the corporate world quite a lot from a lot of the big corporate companies and stuff, where a lot of this tech is available to all. I think we need to try and do that at a point early stages and stuff as well. So I will leave you all in peace now. So thank you ever so much for your time again, everybody. I really do appreciate it. And like I say, any questions, please let us know. So thank you very much for your time, and we'll see everybody soon. Brilliant.
Thanks.
Cheers, guys.
Bye.
Thank you ever so much. Take
Bye.
care. Bye. Bye.